Welcome to Shad's Guitar Show. Whether it's the gear or the players who made the gear famous, join me each week as we discuss all things guitar. Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome back to Shad's Guitar Show. Glad you're joining me today, and I wanted to dive in today to the topic of spring reverb, where it came from, who created it, and ultimately who I think perfected it. It's such a great effect, and I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but I actually have a surf rock band called the Surflings, and you can check out our music on any streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to stuff, and check it out. But obviously, when it comes to surf music, spring reverb is like the most critical effect for that genre of music, and I started thinking about spring reverb and wanted to figure out where did it come from and how did it become a thing. So I did a little dive into it, and I want to share what I found with you guys. All right, spring reverb, I think whenever you think of it, what comes to mind for me automatically is surf music, just because that's such a passion of mine, and I'm in a surf band. But we find spring reverb in all kinds of different music, and that is because it's the reverb that's been built into guitar amplifiers since the early days. Now, certainly amps now have a lot of different reverbs built into them, hall or room kind of reverbs. But in the early days, you got that spring reverb, and we all know that sound, that great splash, that great drip when you turn it way up. It's just an incredible sound. And while I had originally kind of assumed that Leo Fender was the architect of this effect, it actually goes back a bit further. And the credit actually goes to a gentleman named Lawrence Hammond. He's the guy behind the Hammond organ. In the early 1930s, Hammond was looking for a way to simulate the sound of a room or a hall inside an electronic instrument. Big rooms were expensive. Churches and theaters weren't always available, so Hammond needed a compact mechanical solution. And his idea? Send sound vibrations through metal springs. Let them bounce around, smear together, and pick them back up with a transducer. So in 1939, he patented the spring reverb system while working through the Hammond Organ Company. The goal was definitely not surf music, which was a long time from even existing, or twang or drip. It was to fake the sound of acoustic properties. At its core, spring reverb is beautifully simple. An input transducer turns your signal into vibrations. Those vibrations travel through one or more long metal springs. Those springs stretch, compress, reflect, and collide, and an output transducer converts those vibrations back into sound. Because springs don't behave like air, the result isn't necessarily realistic, but it has tons of character. Bright, splashy, slightly metallic, and gloriously imperfect. That imperfection is the magic. So, spring reverb originally lived in organs, hi-fi systems, and experimental audio research, much of it connected to places like Bell Labs. But guitarists didn't care about realism, they cared about vibe, and that's where Leo Fender enters the story. So, since it already existed, we know that Leo wasn't trying to invent a new effect, but he was trying to give guitar players portable ambience. And in the late 50s and early 60s, the engineers at Fender adapted Hammond-style spring reverb into standalone units and ultimately into the amps themselves that the Fender Electronic Instruments Company was making. So in 1961, Fender outboard reverb unit, the classic 6G15 tank, was invented. In the early 60s, that reverb was built directly into amps. Spring reverb did something that no plate or hall reverb could do. It reacted physically to your playing. It distorted, crashed, and bloomed. You could literally kick the amp and hear it explode. Surf guitarists in particular turned it into a percussive weapon. Blues players used it for depth and that lonely feel, and country players used it for space without adding mud to the sound. It didn't sound like a room. It sounded like electric guitar culture. So who really invented spring reverb? Well, let's settle it cleanly. It was invented by Lawrence Hammond, originally for organs and electronic instruments. Perfected by Leo Fender and Fender engineers, and immortalized by guitarists who embraced its weirdness. Spring reverb is the perfect example of accidental genius, a technical solution that became an artistic signature. In today's world, digital reverbs can simulate cathedrals, plates, rooms, and galaxies, but players still chase real spring in that metal box. Why? Because spring reverb isn't just an effect. It's a sound with gravity, tension, and personality. And so now every time you hear that unmistakable spring reverb drip, what you're actually hearing is a 1930s organ inventor echoing through decades of guitar history. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with a gear-obsessed friend. And also, if you're not following me on social media, please subscribe to Shad's Guitar Show on YouTube, and also follow me on Instagram at Shad's Guitar Show. I really appreciate the support. And remember, the perfect tone is out there, so keep chasing it.